Hi, team. Welcome to the Escape Podcast for Star Wars The Old Republic. Coming up, Unbalanced Companions and what might be happening to rebalance them. But first, a couple bits of SWTOR news and a shout out to our guild Alea Yacht Est on Jedi Covenant. Our broadcast astromech today is EPC 118, who is neither a companion nor balanced, but will be riding this escape pod to broadcast the show. Okay, buddy, you may not survive this, but it's a risk I'm willing to take. With me, as always, is Seema. Hi, Seema. How's it going?
Hey Max. Oh, it's going very well. I've been spending a lot of time in SWTOR doing various things. Like, I've been having fun on the planets, doing just the regular planetary heroics, which I did not predict. Well, I did kind of predict. I kind of felt I would probably like that doing that. So, and then my normal ops nights we've been doing, and then plus tonight, extra treat I got to run with Soldiers of Light because I was on earlier and they needed a healer, and I said, "Hey, I'm a healer." So we did the Ravagers, and I can tell you now that Coratani still can reset, and she did it to us twice, and we finally
Really?
did the thing where you go all the way outside, reset the instance, come back in, kill the trash again, and that time she worked. However, we wiped in the second room because, I don't know, some healer, I won't say who, got killed by um, a mouse droid.
Really? Fun.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah. So we
it's
actually ended up doing Cortani 4 times. But I leveled from 55 to 61, I think. And I got a Sleen, so that was
really.
cool. And it was fun riding with. Yeah, because when you do the original one-time quest,
Oh, right.
which I kind of think that might be what messed up Cortani because I couldn't accept the quest until I was level 60, and I leveled to 60 inside the instance, and then we shared the quest. And nobody took me up on this, but I think maybe that might have, because when we would try to phase into the second room for, when you killed Cortani, what would happen is it would start to phase, and everything would go to black, and you'd hear the sounds like you were going to end up in the second room. But then we'd like rubber band back into the first room, and the fight would be reset.
Oh, weird.
So I was wondering if it was doing some kind of a check on quest completion or something, and it was confused by my situation. But anyway, whatever.
Yeah, that is weird. Hmm.
We did do it, and I did get a Sleen, and it was a lot of fun.
Oh, great.
Um, on the book front, I just recently finished re-listening to Stormfront, which is a Harry Dresden book by Jim Butcher, which I read a few years ago, and I read it again because I was wanting to. I hadn't read any of the other books, and I kind of wanted to have this like blanket of 14 available books to just pick up one whenever I was casting about for a book. So I kind of wanted to restart the series because I didn't really remember Stormfront that well, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I like the mood of it, and I like Harry Dresden, and I like his sidekick, the Skull,
Yeah.
whose name is escaping me.
Yeah, I forgot his name
And then
too.
I started another book that's sort of on a similar vein. It's a police procedural with some supernatural element to it, and it takes place in London, and it's a current setting. And it's called Midnight Riot. I had never heard of it before, but it's called Midnight Riot by a guy named Ben Aronovich. So far, really engaging characters. I have really high hopes for this one, so I'll report back when I finish it, but I'm really enjoying it. So that's for me, the SWTOR and books. What's going on with you, Max?
So I spent some time this week. We did a little bit of opsing. I took my Vanguard to finish. I finished the story completely. It was already 65, but I finished the story completely so that I could start working on my Alliance headquarters and getting the new companions on that character. And I got him all outfitted for tanking because we may do mandatory fun night this week on the Republic side, which we like to do every once in a while. And I wanted to have my Vanguard ready to go. So I looked up all of the min maxing on where tanks are falling for Knights of the Fallen Empire so far. There are a couple good posts out there that show you a little bit of that for tanking on a Vanguard. Got up to speed on all of what that's looking like, started making some augments, and I do share a set between my Power Tech and my Vanguard for the basic pieces, the core 7 or 8 pieces, including the shield. But you need to still figure out implants and relics, which are a little bit different in 4.0 from 3.0. And I got that stuff straightened out as well, as best I could. You can't get the good relics until you start getting into ops and getting drops. You can get one of them, though, because I think it's the... it's not reactive warding. It's one of the shield ones, the on-use shield ones, under many and most circumstances, is a best in slot. The one that you can buy with crystals.
Okay.
The shrouded something shroud. Otherwise, you have to get reactive warding from ops to get the 216, 220 versions. So I did that. I also got my Sork to 65, not through the story, but up to 65, and a full PvP set of 204 gear, so I can do more PvP on my Sork. However, since, it's not as good as the Sork, but I PvP'd quite a bit on my Mercenary. I still go back and use my Mercenary every once in a while. I got into it enough that it's fun to make full use of all of those PvP style abilities and rocket out. You use rocket out almost every cooldown when you're in PvP, so it's pretty fun. It's much better than it was in 3.0, PvPing with a DPS mercenary, so I like it. It also reminds me...
Was that the Shrouded Crusader relic? Was that the relic you were talking about?
Yep.
Okay.
Which is a pain because it's on use, but it because of the effects and the balance of stats, in most cases, especially for a Power Tech Vanguard, is a best in slot. I do have my Mercenary spec'd currently as Arsenal instead of Innovative Ordnance. Innovative Ordnance on a single target would probably get me about 1.5% on perfect rotation, 1.5% more damage over time. However, that's on single target fight with no target switching. I still find a ton of efficiency to Arsenal, and because Arsenal has come up so close, and there's so many fights where you do a lot of target switching, I think I may be staying with Arsenal for 4.0. So jury's still out, but for now I'm still Arsenal. I may play still with some Innovative Ordnance and see how it feels, but I'm having fun going back to Arsenal so far. I was Innovative Ordnance for all 3.0.
When it's really close like that, you probably do better with the spec that you like anyway.
Yeah, the spec that you like, and then has those other advantages of just all of the instacast bursty type stuff. It's so hard with a dot spec to get any value out of it when you've got a lot of ads in any sort of fight, either leading up to things or even ads within a fight, because the dots never tick all the way and you're not getting all the value out of it. Your DPS actually goes down quite a bit.
Yes.
And then
the dots are not worth the global cooldown if the thing doesn't live long enough.
Right, exactly. And then I am listening to Jim Butcher's, a different series from Jim Butcher. I've done all of the Harry Dresden, and I do like his Harry Dresden stuff, so I figured I would try the Calderon series. I'm listening to Furies of Calderon, about halfway through it, and it's pretty good. I'm liking it. It's worthwhile. I don't like it as much as the Harry Dresden stuff, but that's because Harry Dresden is just so fun. In terms of fantasy books, Furies of Calderon is pretty good. I'm certainly enjoying it a little bit more than my last book, which was Seth Dickinson's The Traitor Baru Cormorant, which was very well written and a very good book, but it's not all that fun. So we're just serious. And
was it too dark?
You mean like little bit dark, a little bit serious, a little bit dry, and a little bit political, a little bit messagey, but good overall. Definitely a top book, of the year from a good author, but just not as fun as like Jim Butcher's books.
Gotcha.
So that's where that stands. But with that, I think we can get into a little bit of news.
Now, an Imperial News Network report.
So in news this week, we do have a patch coming out on Tuesday, or it's already out this week, patch 4.0.2a. There will be, you're probably seeing already the official patch notes, but to sum it up, we hear that there are companion changes, which we'll be talking about in detail in this podcast. And then there's some other minor fixes. They're continuing to get those fixes in, which I'm pleased about. There are people who were having login issues, problems with the launcher. There were also some missions that still needed fixes. And we saw this problem creep up this week where corpses were failing to despawn and causing a lot of lag and other issues. They actually did a server restart this week and to try to get around some of that. And they're going to have some additional fixes going in for that, apparently.
Yeah, I saw those piles of corpses when I was doing some of the story on another character, and I was like, how come I can't scavenge all these corpses? Well, they probably hadn't scavenged already, they just hadn't despawned.
Yeah.
But there were just piles of droids everywhere.
So that hopefully will be fixed completely in this updated patch. I don't know what would have caused that to happen, but something happened apparently. We're also seeing threads in the forums. You might want to chime in and jump in there. There has been a lot of activity in a couple threads that they started earlier in the week, which relate again to the companion balance that we saw go in the last patch a week ago. They started soliciting feedback because there was a lot of contentious feedback about that, and they're still continuing to solicit feedback. There are updates going in tomorrow, but they're still keeping up the conversation. They want to hear more about how the tank companions are working out, even how they're going to be working out after this patch goes in. So if you have opinions, if you're seeing things of how you want those companions to be working better, jump in those threads and participate. It sounds like they're really interacting and listening as that goes along. So that's good. What else?
It's not really new news, but the event schedule is going to be bounty contract this week, the week of this podcast. The week of December 8th, the Gree event. Week of December 15th, Rackle, and then back to bounty contract week for the last week of December. I'm looking for bounty contract week because I've decided that I want to buy the die schematics that you can get with bounty contracts, and I don't have quite enough bounty contracts to buy these 2 schematics. So it's on top of wanting to do the heroics and finishing the story on a couple of characters and doing some Star Fortress, I want to kill some bounties. So it's just a lot to do this week.
It sure is.
And then also just a note of Conquest this week is going to be Deathmark, and the following week is Trade Emporium, which is probably going to be another crafting one where the crafting is unlimited.
Yes.
December 8th, Relics of the Gree, to coincide with the Gree event that week. And then December 15th, the Rackle Resurgence. So that's also going to correspond with the Rackle event of that week.
Which you want to keep track of if you have not yet gotten Loken as a companion.
That's right.
For example.
That is entirely right.
Absolutely. The Conquest is interesting. Our guild had sort of been ignoring Conquest the last couple months and now is back on it. Part of it is that there's the new crafting mat. Part of it is that we're just doing lots of things, so it's easier to hit the targets. But it's interesting to see that sort of spike back up in at least anecdotal popularity amongst our guild, and I imagine other guilds are seeing that as well. Speaking of our guild and community news, I did want to do a shout out this week to Bescus and Bellaque from the House of Thon. So I was talking to my pal Thon Landro on Friday. We were talking about companions and influence, and he said he had a couple apprentices that he was helping out with getting to their lessons on a daily basis in the car ride to school, for example, named Bescus and Bellaque. And I just wanted to say hi, guys, and hope you have a good ride to school.
Hi, Bescus. Hi, Bellaque.
Thon Landro, good talking to you, and hope we can catch up more in game this week. Also, a shout out to a very young guild member of ours, Bolto. So one of our good friend guildies who's always in. His son, I don't know his exact age, but it sounded sort of junior high-ish. Was in playing with one of our ops teams on Friday, a pickup group, and ran him through EV, and he's a good player and fun, real nice kid. So that was very cool too. So hey, Bolto, nice job. Hope you come run with us more. So when we say AIE is a family-friendly guild, that's the kind of thing we're talking about, and that's the reason we sort of keep it a little family-friendly in forums and in guild chat is for reasons like that.
Also, Max has updated our FAQ post and it's pinned to the guild forums now, so you might run an eye over that if you're guildy or if you're thinking about wanting to join. There's lots of info in there, and also let us know if you feel that there's a question that hasn't been covered in that document. We can certainly add it.
Absolutely. There's a bunch of basic stuff in there, stuff anybody who's in the guild probably already knows, but especially if you're new to the guild, there's some good things in there you might want to take a look at. Also, to anyone not in AIE, our guild is always looking for new members on Jedi Covenant. We always want to put a note in there about that. Our parent gaming community, Alea Iacta Est, is one of those very large, family-friendly multi-game groups. And we have a solid guild in Star Wars The Old Republic on both the Republic and Imperial sides. Guild information is available at aie-guild.org, and you can catch our officers in-game with a /cjoin AIE LFO, looking for officer LFO. Also, certainly, thank you to the chat room. I see we've got a pretty big group in there this evening. It is always fun, and I will catch up with all of you guys after the show. But with that, I think we can check in on some of the companions. So they got really powerful, and I was just letting them go off and run by themselves. And Kalia, that was working out for you, wasn't it?
I work better alone anyway.
I know, right? But so I hear that they got nerfed, but now they're gonna potentially get buffed back up a little bit. Is that gonna be okay, Mako?
I can handle that.
Okay, well that's good. That's good. So I think I can start pulling all my companions back in. Maybe I'll even pull Nadia back in.
Thanks for trusting me.
Oh, shut up, Nadia.
Shut up, Nadia.
So this week,
Nadia can just stay wherever she is.
Thanks for trusting me.
thanks for trusting me. Shut up. Shut up, Meg. Okay. So, unbalanced companions. That is our topic. They were unbalanced, then they tried to balance them, and they became unbalanced in a slightly different way that they didn't necessarily expect, and players weren't ready for them to be unbalanced back to how they thought they were supposed to be balanced. And so now they may be getting rebalanced again. And we're going to dig into that because there's been a couple conversations in the forums. There's been some dev talk going on. There's been a lot of explaining, which has been very, very useful. And I think it's been great to see that process. And there's been some listening, apparently, from the devs and some updates that are going in. So we got an update that... So we got into Knights of the Fallen Empire, and all the companions seemed to get very powerful. The healing was very powerful, especially as you had a lot of influence. They were often and being able to go off and do a lot of things on their own. If you had a strong healing companion with you and you were doing even pretty hard content, I was, staying around 95% health, never dropping below 95% health, not CCing anything, just crashing through everything and getting stuff done. And that's not what they meant. Oops, that's not exactly what we intended, because it sort of broke what their design goal was for certain tiers of content. And that's one thing we'll talk about, is what some of their design goals were. So then they said, all right, well, we had these design goals, it's not fitting in. We're gonna roll that back. Let's make some changes. Let's get them back to where we wanted the design goals originally. Okay, so they went ahead and did that. And all of the players, or many of the players, had a lot of varying opinions on that. Mostly it was, wow, this is way too much of a nerf. We now got into this sort of new groove of how to play with our companions and what they were able to do. Now we can't do any of that anymore. It's now it all feels broken. And they had to take a step back and say, okay, well, what were our design goals? What is the new way players really play? how has this sort of evolved, and what do we really need to be at now? Maybe we can't go back to our original design goals. So we'll talk about that, of where they're rebalancing to, and how that sort of impacts normal gameplay, heroic weekly missions, just off the heroic planetary missions, and Star Fortresses in particular. And then we'll talk a little bit about, some more depth on our opinions and where we see this going in the future. So let's get into it with, I think one of the most interesting things to me that I was glad to see from them, and Seema, I'll be interested in your perspective too, was that breakdown of their stated design goals of where they expected this content to be. We speculated on this. In fact, you and I have talked about this a little bit, of where we thought these various pieces of content sort of fit, where Star Fortress fit versus heroic missions versus story missions and that kind of thing.
Right.
And they did have something in mind, in theory. Hopefully they're not, writing the spec in hindsight. But they said, leveling content and Knights of the Fallen Empire chapter story content should be at a challenge level low, which means more focused on the story, able to get through it. You shouldn't have to be going crazy. You should be able to get through that pretty easily. Great. Heroic missions, the Heroic 2 planetary mission, should be challenge level medium. It should be a little bit more difficult. You should have to be able to be playing your class, and you might even need a friend's help. And I think that's an important part that we'll get into here in a second, is when should you need a friend's help and when should you not? And then there's the Star Fortress solo mode, I think or the Heroic 2 level mode, the entry mode, which was again supposed to be that challenge level medium, versus Heroic Star Fortress, which was supposed to be challenge level high. And it sounds like what they meant, and this is what I expected that they meant, was challenge level high means this is hard. It shouldn't necessarily be impossible to solo, but close. This should be one of the harder things to solo in the game. And most players, or many players, are probably going to want to just team up and bring a friend.
Right.
So does that match what you would have expected of their design goals, Seema? And or where are the differences that didn't seem to work out?
I guess for me, I expected, yes, the leveling content and the chapters content, the challenge level to be low. In fact, they had said that before, that they don't expect anyone to be stopped by the challenge level of that content, stopped from finishing the story or get to a point where they feel frustrated and don't want to go on. The Heroic 2 missions on the planets, I thought that they meant for that to be solo content, and I'm okay with it challenge level medium, because I still feel like if I go back to the planets in my raid gear and playing a spec that I've played for 2 years now, that I probably am all over medium in terms of just soloing through those. But the way they set it up with all 70 whatever of them available to be picked up in the fleet, to me that kind of sets an expectation that yes, you should be able to just run through them, that you wouldn't be on the fleet or in your guild going, anyone want to go do Tatooine, because you might just in a day run through Tatooine while you're having your coffee, because the next day you're going to run through Alderaan or something. So I guess I did have an expectation there. Star Fortress, I expected the solo version to be pretty easy, and I don't know that I had expectations for the Heroic Star Fortress. I was curious about that. And then but I have to say I'm totally fine with it being high, because yeah, if you want to be the player that works hard on their gear, that gets the last bit of functionality out of your spec, then Heroic Star Fortress is for you, and the achievement for doing that solo is for you.
Yeah.
So I guess that's sort of my perspective in a nutshell on those.
Yeah. This is me in a nutshell. It's on the video. I even, before Knights of the Fallen Empire launched and we heard that there was going to be this Star Fortress idea, I had even potentially expected Heroic Star Fortress to require 4 players and to be like doing a heroic flashpoint. And I would have been
Yeah,
even
right.
fine
Because
with
they
that.
called it a flashpoint. Yeah.
The fact that I could manage to get through it solo, I was interesting. It was very difficult, and I was fine with it being very difficult. In fact, I went back even after the nerf this week, and I ran it on my mercenary. And the mercenary's got some advantages because you have self heals and CCs. But I ran it with a healer companion at level 25, and I was able to solo it again, and it was very hard. And
I,
I liked, I liked that. I was okay with that, and I would be okay with that hard of content in the game, and I think that's fine. The fact that I did it on my mercenary and was able to get through it, I don't necessarily think I would be able to get through it on a character that didn't have either self heals or CC or potentially both. So I'd be interested to see how that goes.
I remember when CZ 198 first came out, I went and did the heroic. Wait, what did I do? I did some version of it, and I soloed it, and I was able to solo it, but it wasn't. It took a long time. In that last fight, the one where you have to kill the TARDISes and jump up around, and the two Typhon type mobs, come down, and then finally the last boss gets released and you fight him. That fight took forever on my Sork, my healing Sork. So I mean, I guess I kind of expected it to be like that, where you could solo it if you're the kind of player that doesn't mind it taking a while, but it'd be so much more fun and fast if you go with friends.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think I don't mind content like that where super challenge mode to do it solo, but most people are going to want to bring a friend. In fact, I think there's a little bit of a lack of group up, go do some stuff type of content that a Star Fortress that required 4 players would have potentially brought. I think we'd be running some more 4 people jumping in and doing a Star Fortress if that was a thing, and now we have more people just soloing it. Everybody just tries to go and solo it, and less grouping in there, which is a little bit of a grouping loss. Now the only thing I group up for is operations, and
Yeah.
they're only that's still fun and interesting, but it's not like, what was it? When McKeb dropped, when the Rise of the Hutt Cartel dropped, we all were going and doing, especially when it first dropped, we were all going and grouping up and doing heroic flashpoints because you were getting good rewards. You were getting gear that was gearing you
Right.
up for ops. And it was interesting group up content, and you had those bonus bosses, and it was like a thing. And
Right.
I sort of miss that in some ways. Regardless, the fact that they had these design goals and they set them out, and then realized that they broke their design goals in basically making everything either lowish or low medium, with still heroic Star Fortress was medium to high. A geared player with a higher level companion could certainly solo it, but a lot of people still were grouping up on that, and that's perfectly okay. But all the heroic stuff was basically ending up low for the most part. There were a couple of that were quite difficult, but because it seemed so low and companions seemed so overpowered, that's when they decided that they were going to roll the companions back, and in particular they nerfed healing companions by about 75%. That was probably a little too much and elicited some feedback
much?
from the player base. And certainly we got a bunch of that feedback from the player base in Reddit, on the forums, in various discussions, all usual, that's it, I rage quit type of posts that you would expect. Nothing too terrible. I mean, there's just a couple people that will do that over
Normal
no matter
stuff.
what you do.
Yeah.
Hey, we added a feature that cures cancer. I'm gonna rage quit because I was gonna cure cancer
I-
myself, and now you destroyed one of my lifelong goals. I don't want to live in a world where somebody else makes the world a better world than I can make the world a better world. So there were some people upset, and some rightly so. And part of it that they realized was what Michael Backus has now put in some of his updates from this weekend, which says all of the things which then led to them having a retraction in part on some of that and the rebalancing that's going to come out this week. So one of the things that he refers to that I think is important and gets to these challenge levels is what they're saying is emergent gameplay and how people ended up doing this stuff that they really sort of can't take away at this point. They made a point to make heroic to the planetary heroics useful. They knew people would want to go do them. They still expected people would need to group up for at least some of them, or average players would want to be grouping up. Nobody had to. Nobody needed to. Everybody was out there soloing it. And what that ended up doing was providing this outlet for people to be able to go, to get in this mode, this play style of being able to go and solo those, being able to as you said, Seema, with my morning coffee, go run, go solo some heroics because I'm building up my alliance, and this is the way I want to go do this thing.
Right. So, I'm meeting some goals that I have for my character in the game.
So for them to break that and to go back to what they thought their design goals were and say now you can't do that anymore, breaks a whole way that people had ended up learning to play for the past couple weeks, and that's a problem. So they said, yes, okay, you're right. This is the way that this has evolved to. We can't just adhere to our original design goals. We have to evolve our design goals. We named these things heroic twos. They're probably they're gonna end up being a little bit easier than what we would expect a heroic two type thing to be, but we're gonna be okay with that. I would almost there's been some suggestion that they just call those just weekly planetary missions and take the heroic 2 part away from it, which I would sort of be okay with. But there's still a difference between what those are and what Star Fortress and heroic Star Fortress are, and that difference is going to be maintained to some degree, and they're going to balance heroic Star Fortress around where they think that thing should be. And again, that's that it should be soloable at sort of as the outlier case, as you're very geared, you're very well knowledgeable about your class. It's possible to solo it, and given those conditions. Otherwise, you're probably going to be wanting to group up. So in order to get there, they're buffing. They're basically buffing the companions back. And we'll talk specifically about how. But what did you have, Seema?
I was just going to say also, just, in the community of players, and it's not just SWTOR, but other games, there is kind of a stigma attached to not soloing. So I would say, push back on that and do what you want to, whatever's fun. But I mean, because how many times have you been on a planet and someone says, hey, anybody want to do such and such, and they get 6 people responding back, you can solo that.
Yeah, you're right. That is, and that's really not fair.
It's beyond not fair. It's like, it doesn't matter.
Right.
If you wanted to do it with a group, then
exactly.
Go for it.
So yeah, even beyond not fair, it's not. If I want a group, or if I want to see if anybody wants to go run some stuff, maybe I just am bored of standing around by myself, mashing buttons, and think it would be cool to just connect up with some players in this massively multiplayer online game. So yeah, no one should ever be criticized for asking the group up, wanting to group up. That should be the norm. That should be the baseline. And the people that go off and solo should be the people you should look at and go, well, if you want to solo, that's cool, but we're gonna do our multiplaying here. Now that said, I solo all the time.
I do too, but yeah.
I know, but
I'm just saying,
you're right. It don't look down on those
But
people. Those
the
those
reason
people are doing it right.
that we tend to solo more is that there's a certain logistics involved with grouping up. And I mean, if someone says, "Yeah, I'll come," and then you find out they're, halfway across the galaxy, and then you have to wait for them. And
Yeah.
gosh, you could have finished it in that time. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I'll be
so
right there, but
I,
1 second I need to go drive to the store and buy a sandwich.
I'll be right back. I'm picking up the kids at school or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So which is
So
true, but that's a little bit of the price you pay to connect up and play with people too, and a lot of times that's a
yeah,
worthwhile price, and we all have to remember that.
I'd say do a mix.
Yeah, although I hate people in general, so I will
I did
of course
a
always
heroic
solo.
on Tatooine today on my scoundrel, and I don't remember which one it is, so don't ask me. But I was surprised that I went through and I was stealth through and clicked on something, and I was surprised to see the completion come up because usually you click on something and then you have to kill a number of these, and then there's like a champion at the end that you have to kill, and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, you know what? If there's one of these on every planet, maybe I'll just go through with my morning coffee and hit those on every planet where I can just stealth through, click on a thing, and go to the next thing.
That's not out of the question. In fact, I'm
And
still only halfway through it, but I have a spreadsheet which is putting a gold star next to all of those on the planets that that are those, like kill nothing or takes 2 seconds or there are a
and
lot
then
of
when
those.
I am playing in the evening when everyone's around, then and we want to do heroics, pick from the list, from column B, the ones that are more tedious to do by yourself.
Right. Right. The ones that with a group are really fast. But you wouldn't
Yeah.
want to just go and solo it. That's a good idea. So exactly what are the changes that they're making? Um, they did a big nerf to healing companions. They're pulling that back up, and so they nerfed healing by about 75% on average. What they're doing to pull that back, they had this behind a spoiler tag. I think that was just to not really a spoiler, but I
No,
think that
it's
was
just
just
to
to
make the
condense the
post
post.
easier to read, I think.
Um, channeled heals will be increased by 61% from where they are now, which even if it was increased by 75%, if you decrease something by 75% and then increase it from where it is now by 75%, you don't get back to where you started.
No,
Just to keep that in
no,
mind.
right.
But
Math.
single target heals are being increased by 42%, and single target hots are being increased by 43%. And then the base stats of all companions are being increased by 15%, which will get you more DPS and more tank ability with your tank companions.
And they said they're approximate numbers because they're affected by influence, but I have a feeling influence is not going to be a huge effect, or else they wouldn't be able to give numbers like 61, 42, 43, and 15.
Yeah, influence is a pretty big effect right now, though. So, yeah, you're right. Are they lessening the effect of influence rank to rank? Or
Well,
are they
if it
just
was a
hitting that
huge
as
difference,
an average?
then these would have to be, they would have to say in the 60% range. They wouldn't be able to, I mean, you'd think they wouldn't say approximately 61%.
Unless it's 61% for, when it was ranked, when it was the level 10 influence companion, it's 61% from what it was at level 10, and when it's level 50, it's still 61% above where it was at level 50. That doesn't mean those 2 points can't necessarily be light years apart. You see what I'm saying? Like if
Yeah.
I still only, if I only did a 100-point heal, now I'm doing a 161-point heal at level 10, but I'm doing a 1,000-point heal at level 50, and now I'm doing a 1,600-point heal instead at level 50. You still could have a big difference across influence comparison between companions at different influence levels, even
Yeah,
though
I see what you're saying.
yeah,
I think I was looking at it wrong. Yeah.
even though so that's we'll see. They are going to come back some. You are going to be able to get at least closer to where it was. Things are still going to be a little bit more difficult than they were at launch, and they're going to continue to balance. As I said in the thread, they are still continuing to look at, different mix between your class and playstyle versus the companions that you're choosing to use, and does it really work out? Like, can you have a Marauder with a DPS companion and be getting through the fights that they would expect you to be able to get through? And in particular, some of the conversation today I saw from Eric Musco was, what about the tank companions? How are those performing? We're looking more closely at how they're performing and doing the expected job. So that's interesting.
Yeah. My experience when I put my companion in tank mode is that it wasn't a very good tank.
Yeah.
Not, I mean, worse than my, years ago now, leveling experience when I was my first Sage and Kaizen and I were out there. I don't know if it's a gear thing or whatever, but it seemed like Treek in tank mode was not holding aggro for even half of the fight.
Yeah. So potentially we will be getting tank companions that are better at tanking. Now, see, when I was leveling up back in the day, I always, on my assassin, I leveled as a DPS assassin and I always used Kemval as a tank, and he was pretty good. So maybe it's especially at the higher levels and especially when you start to get geared that they break down. But I
don't know.
I did like it back in the day as tanks.
I mean, I had switched to having my companions on DPS for a while now, and I was just kind of playing around with tank.
Yeah.
As doing it that way.
Now, Star Fortresses in particular, they do say they're going to be treating those different. They're not, and they're potentially going to be balancing them slightly different. They do want this to be a challenge that people should aspire to and not just be easy. They do want something. They're saying that they want to even call them something different than just like a Heroic 2 Star Fortress. And they're even in the forums, and you can participate in this as well. They're soliciting names. what do you think we should call these? I don't know that they. I almost think that Planetary Heroic 2s are the ones that should be renamed, and the Heroic 2 Star Fortress is more true to what I would expect the Heroic 2s to have been, but I don't know. Maybe it's even a little harder than a Heroic 2 ever was.
They could just call it hard mode.
Yeah, they could just call it hard mode. So apparently they've been getting some good suggestions. I tried to look through the thread of 100 pages or whatever, and I didn't see many of those good suggestions. But it'll be interesting to see what they come up with. Maybe it is just hard mode Star Fortress. But hard mode, to me, in my mind, a hard mode Flashpoint is, you need 4 players. You need a tank and a healer and 2 DPS.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, that's true.
So, I don't know. Who knows what they'll come up with and where that ends up. Now we get to Max's hypothesis about where all of this is at, and then some potential spin on that. So I did some whole thinking about this thing. So that's the deal. They were overpowered, then they got nerfed. It went, it didn't go great. There was a lot of criticism of the way they handled the nerfing, and then there was some positive feedback the way they handled the criticism and what they're doing now to address that and where they're ending up. Me looking at the whole experience, I'm seeing that the drama, the feedback, the update cycle, the whole back and forth with the dev team, the conversation that's going on, even the people saying I'm going to rage quit, and people saying I'm unrage quitting in some of these threads now, given what they're doing and where they're bringing it back. Even before, they were rage quitting before the nerf even happened, and now they're unrage quitting before the fix even goes in. But that's fine.
Yeah.
All of that, to me, in some ways, is like, it's almost meta content that's good in some ways, that's keeping people engaged, that's having this conversation, that's getting the devs talking to the community and making the community feel like they're heard, even though the devs ostensibly in some cases, you could look at it as they just broke a thing, they did something wrong. why should they be rewarded with engagement of the community? And, you know, because I stopped punching you in the face doesn't mean that I should be rewarded for being a hero because I stopped. So,
I mean, yeah, I could totally see that because I mean, who ever nerfs anything by 75%? Who I mean,
so
that's
yeah.
yeah.
So I'm not saying it's a conspiracy and they did it on purpose. I am saying though that the whole meta experience has actually been good, and we don't have any new content coming out this month and in December. We didn't have any, we don't have chapter 10 or chapter 11 coming yet, or chapter 10 coming out yet. This almost in a weird way feels like content. It feels like a game update. It feels like they're releasing something. There was the companion update, now there's the new companion update, and everybody's waiting to see what the new companion update is going to feel like, and we're going to be able to go back and do it's content, which is weird because it was something they broke and then they're fixing. So
it's like drama content.
Yeah, and then also just some forum and Reddit drama content, which is keeping people engaged in the community. So you could take that to a conspiracy theory level and say, what if there was some conspiracy to cause drama? And I don't think that's the case, but you could go there. The conspiracy theorists might be going there. On the flip side, if I was a game designer, I could potentially be looking at this kind of situation and trying to figure out how I build this sort of meta content drama conversation into my game releases in the future. Maybe not as blatantly as breaking something and making everybody mad, but maybe I on purpose in a little bit release things in a non-optimized way, and then
Like go a little farther, yeah.
and then have this then open up this dialogue with the community about how can we better optimize. This is what we're going for, and we realize it's not all the way there. You guys help us out, and then we'll do this content update where we just tweak a couple of parameters. We're not like designing new art. And we're going to release that as content update patch. And you guys check it out and tell us if we did a good job. And maybe we'll do one more after that and get everybody sort of engaged in that process where you're barely doing any work. And you're potentially getting rewarded for not just doing it right the first time.
You're getting some goodwill for fixing it.
And you're getting goodwill for listening to your player base and all of that kind of thing. I don't know. Maybe when I have my MMO design company, I'm gonna try this out and patent the idea of how you use this meta content concept to engage your community better. What do you think of that? Is that a good idea or the best idea ever?
I think what you sacrifice in your MMO company is any sense from the players that they could have confidence that you know what you're doing.
Possibly.
You're eroding that sense that that you do have metrics and you use them and stuff when you make changes like minus 75% and then go, oh crap, sorry, we should have done minus 10%. What were we thinking?
Yeah.
Or when you say things like, we were surprised to find out that you guys were playing this way. Why would they ever be surprised to find out how we're playing? That just makes me feel like because they're off playing Battlefront. I don't know. Don't they know what we're playing?
Right. That is a problem with the way they did it. Now, when I do it, I'll do it in a much more subtle way.
Yes,
So
you'll be subtle to the max. We won't even see it happening. It'll just be that subtle.
So we'll see. But yeah, that was some of the criticism that BioWare is even still getting. That why couldn't you get it right the first time, and why were you surprised that it worked out the way that it did? And
or closer to right, like a good tweak is like 3%.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're bringing it back up 40%, 50%, 60%. That's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you even use a calculator?
You know, calculator's built into Windows. You can just launch it right there, guys. I don't know if you know that.
Yes, there is one there. But yeah, so it does. So you do kind of lose some sense that you know some sense from your community that they feel they're in good hands.
Right.
It just seems
some trust in your
sort of arbitrary and random.
yeah, some trust
And
and
you know,
buy-in
there's a history
into
of
what you
that
do.
with the making big changes and changes that were way bigger than seemed necessary. So we already are kind of primed for that
Right.
expectation.
Right. But
I guess I'm glad they are making a change back. Like they never changed back. They never made. I'm thinking of the slot machine thing. They never did say, okay, yeah, I guess that was too big of a change. We'll, or did they?
no, they never
I don't
fixed
think
that.
I don't
They're
think they ever
completely
did say,
useless.
well, let's reset, let's tweak it a little further, and maybe come back a bit from that.
No.
They never did.
No,
But,
they're completely useless. Yep.
I mean, one thing that Michael Backus has said is that they haven't had a good track record with putting new systems in and then staying engaged with them. They have a tendency to put new things in and then never touch them again, like GSF and like the old space missions. And you know, the slot machine is one of those. It's like, yeah, there was a big deal. We did that. But we never went back to it. I mean, he didn't say slot machine specifically, but yeah, that is kind of their history too.
Yep. Yeah, but as you said, I am glad that in this case, they are engaged, they are listening to feedback, and they are making some changes. So we'll see.
And I'm
see
glad
this week.
on the part of the community that it's not all people just saying, "Oh, right, you guys suck, rage quit." It is some people saying, "Okay, here's my feedback. I experienced this. I ran this heroic. I had this spec. I had this experience in this gear, and this is my take on that." So kudos to people that are doing those kinds of posts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good job with the people that are engaging in the constructive way to get this fixed. Absolutely. But I think with that, we have chatted quite a bit about the balance, and we're going to take our
I think we're coming in way under, right? This is gonna be a short one.
Nope. So our EPC
I
118
know.
can take this long podcast and take his unbalanced self and go off into the escape pod for a little while and get this out to you. Thanks to all of you for joining us on newoverlords.com, on iTunes or YouTube, or live on Twitch. We will stream again next Monday night on twitch.tv/newoverlords around 10:30 p.m. Central. Also, please follow us on Twitter @MaxTheGray and @AIESEMA, and come find us on Jedi Covenant and ask us for an AIE Guild invite. We would be glad to have you. And we will talk to you soon.
Later, everyone.